Jimin knows Jungkook's message. Why did he move? The rain had just subsided in the still foggy morning when one short message came to Jimin's cell phone. No sender name. There are no emoticons. Just one short sentence made him immediately stop talking in the middle of breakfast and stood up with a drastically changed look on his face. I know you'll understand, Hyung. But if you come now. None of those around him realized that the day would be the one that changed everything. They saw Jimin, who was usually calm and patient, suddenly running into the officer's room, talking quickly to a senior officer, then came back just to grab a spare military jacket and get out before anyone had time to ask any further questions. There is no official schedule, no holiday permits. Jimin is gone because only he knows the content of the message and only he knows how deep the meaning of each word Jungkook writes. The message came at an unusual time, around 5:42 a.m., hours in which even Jimin had not fully opened his eyes. But when he saw the contents of the message, his body was immediately stung by something invisible. Jimin keeps all of Jungkook's messages in a hidden folder that only he can access. But none of them are like this. No pleas, no lengthy explanations. Just the belief that Jimin will come. And that's enough. For Jimin, it wasn't just a request. It was a call coming from someone too tired to say much, but too trusting to hope quietly. With half-wet shoes and a jacket that still harbored the scent of the storage room, Jimin climbed into a military logistics vehicle that happened to be heading eastward, to the division where Jungkook served. He doesn't carry much, just a small bag and an old photo that he never throws out of his wallet. A photo of the two of them at the Speak Yourself concert, a time when everything is still easy, warm, and full of laughter. Along the way, Jimin did not speak. But in his eyes there was a shadow that kept him at a distance, Jungkook's face when they last met. A face that harbors wounds, but also holds hope. Jimin knows. Jungkook needs someone. Not anyone, but himself. Upon arrival, the atmosphere of the barracks seemed ordinary. There was no major incident. There were no accidents. But from the way a young soldier greeted him with a puzzled face, Jimin knows. They don't even know why he came that day, he asked calmly. Where is Jungkook? The answer he received was enough to make him speed up his pace on the roof of the barracks. Alone. Since dawn, Jimin climbed the fire escape without hesitation. The cold air hit him in the face, and as soon as he opened the door leading to the roof, he found Jungkook stood on the edge, looking at the gray sky that had not yet fully opened. Jungkook's body was firm, but his shoulders fell slightly. There was silence there, but also tension, like someone who has been holding back something for too long. Jimin said nothing, he just walked over, standing next to her, and for a few seconds, the world went silent again. Jungkook spoke first. When I sent that message, I didn't know if you still wanted to come for me. Jimin turned his head, looking at her. I came, not because you asked me to, but because I know you're waiting. Jungkook closed his eyes, and for the first time, she let her tears fall not out of weakness, but out of relief. Because finally, someone came. And not just anyone, but the person he expected the most. The morning wind was still ruffling their hair when Jungkook finally said the phrase. His voice was slow, almost blown away by the soft but firm voice of nature. Hyung, I never stopped waiting for you. The sentence is not just a confession. It was a wound that had been tightly closed for a long time. For Jungkook, missed time in the military is not just a matter of training or routine. It was also a lonely time, a place where there was no stage, no army, and for a long time, no Jimin. Ever since they separated to enter each other's military duties, there was an unwanted distance formed between them. At first, it was just a matter of misaligned schedules, then it became less and less communication, and finally it became a long silence. But silence is not out of hatred. It was out of fear. Fear of the fact that their world has changed, and maybe theirs too. But the second Jungkook said he never stopped waiting, Jimin knew. They never really get away from each other. Every time I have dinner and alone. I always imagine you sitting across from me, Jungkook continued. I know it sounds stupid. That's what makes my day feel normal. Jimin did not answer directly. He just stepped closer and stood right in front of Jungkook. Their eyes met, and in that gaze, words became unimportant. There are many things he wants to say. About the regret, about the longing that was hard to explain, about the worry that he always felt whenever there was news from Jungkook's division. But what finally came out of his mouth was only one sentence. "I'm here now, Jungkook. And I'm not going anywhere." They sat on the roof for an hour. No camera, no media flashlights. Only the sky begins to turn blue and a pair of best friends rediscover each other. Jungkook ends up telling a lot about his lonely nights, about the pressure of being the youngest member of BTS in a completely different environment, and about how only one name has always kept him afloat. Park Jimin, and Jimin listened. Without judging, without cutting. The atmosphere of the stadium at that time was no different from the usual. ARMY's roaring cry, lightsticks light that formed a purple sea, and the beat of music that echoed to the heart. But there was something different that night, something that could not be described in words, it could only be felt. Because that night, for the first time in a long time, Park Jimin and Jungkook stood back on one stage. Together, everything happened so fast, but it felt slow in the hearts of the ARMY. When the music pauses for the MC's pause, the camera captures that moment. Jimin glanced at Jungkook, and Jungkook, unconsciously, turned his body slightly towards him. They don't talk. But the way Jimin smiled a little, and the way Jungkook looked down with an expression that couldn't be covered, said more than 1,000 song lyrics. The ARMY began to whisper. Some covered their mouths with their hands, some shed tears. Not because of hysteria, but because they know this is not a fan service. This is not a script. It's real. The next song they sang that night was Spring Day. The song was not without reason chosen. A song that has long been known as a symbol of loss, waiting and secretly guarded hope. And when Jimin's vocal parts arrive, "I miss you," Jungkook closed his eyes. His hand, which had been accustomed to move freely all this time, that night tightly grasped the microphone, as if it were the only thing that kept him from collapsing with feelings. Then, suddenly, they approached each other. Without warning, without a script. As their vocal harmonies blended, a sentence sculpted in the air, inaudible but felt. Here we are again. Among the thousands of spectators, not a few finally looked down and cried. There is a sense of emotion, relief, and love that come together in the chorus. On the big screen, Jimin and Jungkook's faces were plastered side by side. The camera captures their glassy eyes, not because of the stage light, but because of the emotions that can no longer be hidden. The moment went viral in minutes. Short snippets are trending on social media, but not because of sensation, but rather because of honesty. The world finally realized that their relationship was not just about idols. It was not just about the stage. It's about people. About two people who grew up together, got hurt together, and in the end, chose to stay together. The concert ended with a fireworks display. But in many people's hearts, one thing shines brighter: the belief that no matter what happens, there is a bond between Jimin and Jungkook that cannot be broken by time, distance, or circumstance. When the stage lights went out and all returned to silence, there was one sentence that echoed in the heads of those who watched. They don't just go back to the stage. They go back to each other. When they finally got off the roof, Jungkook's eyes seemed calmer. The steps are lighter. And Jimin walked next to him, not as a star, not as Hyung, but as someone who chose to stay. This story may never be made official. It will never make headlines. But in the hearts of the ARMY who are always watching, they know something had changed that day, and either consciously or not, the love that was never named finally found its own form.